older lady who came to get me in a wheelchair. And when she came in the room, she sounded just like my grandmother who passed away. And she's like, "Well, baby, why you don't have no socks on your feet?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, and this lady was just talking to me like my real grandmother would have talked to me. And she was like, "Don't you come back to this hospital to have that little boy." And she didn't know, like, she didn't see my chart. She had no clue, but she knew that I was carrying a little boy. And she's like, "They're killing us. And they're killing our sons in this hospital, honey." She said, "You wouldn't believe the things that I saw during this COVID."
This is part two of the two-part series on mystical pandemic births. I'm your host, Sanaa Green, and you will love this episode. This story you will not believe. Mia Beeyuh is my guest, and she is a woman who gave birth during the pandemic in 2020. Her story has so many twists and turns, and she was very open with sharing some of the fears and challenges that she had while preparing to give birth. Things about her mother and what kind of mother she would be, whether or not she could be a good mother, generational curses that she was looking to change. And there's so much in this episode. I think you're going to love it. Even if you have not given birth, are not about to give birth, this is a great story. I had no idea some of the harrowing experiences that Black mothers are going through in the United States. I heard that the infant death mortality rate among Black women was higher than among other groups of women in the United States, but I didn't understand the extenuating circumstances that make that number possible. Especially when you think about all of the women who gave birth in basically in the field with a midwife. My mother was born at home with a midwife. So she talks in this episode, Mia talks about some of the challenges that she had as a mother. And you will hear some of the remnants of what Spirit Traveler, Doula, and Midwife, who was featured in part one of Mystical Pandemic Births, was talking about in real time. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you like it, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, share the episode and the podcast with anyone you think might like to hear it. I'm here with new mother, Mia Beeyuh, and I'm going to speak to her about her experience of becoming a mother during the pandemic. Mia, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
me.
for having me.
First of all, can you tell me about the prophecy that you received? You said about 6 years before you got pregnant,
Yes,
you got a reading or a divination about your son coming. Can you tell me about
yeah.
that?
So it wasn't a reading. It was just a prophecy that I received. It came through me. So I probably about 6 years before I had him, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was at a baby shower or something like that, but I wasn't sure whose baby shower it was. And there was this woman who brought in a young boy, and he was like dripping wet. So it seemed like he had drowned or something like that. And I was trying to get to him to like help him. And when I finally made it to him, I was panicking. I called 911 and they were like, "What are you calling us for? You don't need us." And they hung up on me. And I did it again and they hung up on me again. And then when I turned around, the little boy was living and he was not wet anymore. He was dry. And the woman handed me the little boy. And then she touched my stomach and she was like, she said, the son you carry will wear a crown. And I woke up. And then maybe about, so like I said, 6 years later, I received actual prophecy.
So wait a minute. So During that dream, what were you frightened by the dream? What made you feel that the dream was something that you could trust? Did you often have dreams that
Yeah.
were
Yes.
prophetic?
So I've been dreaming since I was probably about 12 years old. I've been having prophetic dreams since I was about 12 years old. So it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me. The only thing that scared me was the fact that when she touched my stomach, it felt like I could feel something happening inside of my body. And that's why I jumped up. Like I woke up like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. And like I said, so later, I had the
So wait a minute. Do you feel like something did happen when she touched
I
you?
do believe so. I believe that, there was a seed that was planted at that time, but I was not ready to be a mother. I had a lot of healing to do within myself. Um, so I think that's what that 6 years was for me to, heal and do what I needed to do so that I could be the best mom possible for my baby.
Mm,
Mm.
hmm. Okay, and you were going to add something. So 6 years
Yeah,
later.
6 years later, I received an actual prophecy where there was like an audible voice, and I do a lot of writing and journaling, so it was like an automatic writing, and the writing was like telling me that I was going to have a son, and that the son that I carried was special, that the father of my son was very important because we were breaking generational curses on both of our bloodlines by me having this baby. Um, God was just like, this little boy is going to be amazing. Like, you'll name him what I tell you to name him. And then when he comes into the world, you'll know that you've given him the right name. Um, by the way he comes in, how he acts, and who he grows up to be. And so, like it was just crazy. Even further than that, it was telling me or explaining to me like, like this is a divine kind of thing. Like the person you have your son with is not gonna be the person that you end up being with forever. Like this is just
This was told to you?
Yep, it's all written
Wow. Okay.
down. So this happened like in June of 2019, and then not too long after that, I met my son's father, and we had my son. Well, we conceived my son. hmm
And so now, so you conceived your son in 2019.
I had him in 2020, so we
Okay.
conceived in 2019 in October.
You conceived in 2019,
hmm
and you had him in
June,
October of
June of
2020,
2020.
at the height of the pandemic. Oh, June of 2020,
hmm
at the height of the pandemic.
hmm
What did you feel when you were pregnant during the pandemic? You were pregnant, then we went into the pandemic mode where people were um, going to the hospital and coming down with COVID. And how did you feel as a mother carrying a child?
It was a little scary. I took a vacation in January, so I was probably about, I think, like maybe 3 months pregnant or so. And I ended up getting sick when I got back home. But at that time, we didn't know what COVID was. But I got extremely sick. Um, and I didn't know what was going on. Like I went to the hospital. They tested me for the flu and something else. I can't remember, but it was a swab in my throat. And they both came back negative. They just sent me home with like a Tamiflu type of medication because that was safe for me to take while pregnant. And like I got better, but it was horrible. I had never been that sick ever. And I'm like, I don't know what this is or what was happening to me. So that was scary. And then like 2 months later, they started talking about COVID. And then they shut everything down.
And so when they started talking about COVID, how did you feel
It
about being pregnant and having the baby?
I felt like I didn't in the beginning. I'm like, okay, this is probably not that serious. Like they'll just get over it soon. And then when it didn't happen, when things got worse and people like started dying and stuff, I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, so I wasn't scared for me personally. Excuse me. I just wanted to keep my baby safe as much as I could. So I stayed in the house a lot. I didn't go anywhere. I was ordering groceries online. They were delivering them. Like I didn't want to um, put myself or my baby in any type of harm by going out. And and then later, like I started to realize, I'm like, okay, this is a little weird the way things are going. And
So let me ask you another question.
mm,
When you were at home, we were in. It was so it's
mm,
COVID. It's October. It's
mm,
2020 when the world is still trying to figure out what COVID is, and everybody's at home and asked to stay home
mm,
and not work, ordering groceries so that they can avoid going out.
mm,
And for many people, this was a time when they were maybe at home alone or had more time to
mm,
think and
mm.
reflect. What were you thinking and what were you journaling during this time? What kind of things were you journaling?
Um, Man, I was going through a lot emotionally. Like my son's father ended up being incarcerated before we found out I was pregnant. So I was going through a bunch of emotions with that, and it there was just a lot going on with me at the time that I had to kind of like sit with all of that stuff because I didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do to kind of like, deflect from what was happening to me at the time. And I just remember like I started to do yoga. I was, um, I was eating like super healthy at the time. I felt like I needed to kind of fix myself at that time. So I spent a lot of time reflecting. Um,
So what's one of the main revelations that you had? Because we're all really in the process of
mhm,
evolving and healing. And I just did an episode that's going to be coming out today that talks about this process of growing and evolving and
mhm,
healing and peeling back
mhm,
layers of shadow beliefs, of limiting
mhm,
beliefs. It's a constant process, and as we're here on this plane and in this society, and we're in the process of evolving, we may, it's going to take some time.
mhm.
So, what can you tell me? Maybe one or two things that you realized during this time about yourself, about your growth or evolution or challenges that you might be dealing with?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones for me was uh feelings of like not being a good enough mom. Um, a lot of fear surrounding being a single mom. Um, I so like I didn't grow up like with my mom for a period of time in my life, and I just kept remembering like, okay, I do not want to do this to my son. Like, and I had to kind of work through some of my mother issues so that I could be able to, you know, be who I needed to be for my son without allowing that part of me to override, the mom that I'm really supposed to be. And then like the fear.
What did you tell yourself? What did you tell yourself in order to reconcile, the issues that you had with your mother? And I think most people have some kind of issue
Hmm.
with a
Hmm.
parent.
Yeah.
Because really, I think that's what we're here to
Yeah.
do. We're here, in response
Yeah.
to, reflection of. So I'm not really asking the specifics,
Yeah.
but what, how did you get to a place where you could resolve it? And it may be that you're still in the process.
Yeah, so I can honestly say that it is a process. Like I still have those moments where I still have to talk through some things um and kind of put things into perspective as a human and as a mom myself, like in being more understanding, to the situation. And then also, like, I had to tell myself, like, my mom is a human, and my mom had a mom. And the mom that my mom had raised me. So I had to keep, reminding myself, like, okay, um, it's possible that, she went through the same things that I went through when I was growing up, but we were in two different spaces. So it's like the way I handled my grandmother might have been different than the way my mom was able to handle my grandmother. And with my grandmother being older, when she raised me, I'm like, maybe she was a little less abrasive with me than she was with my mom. But I didn't know my mom's story, and I asked her a lot of questions, like, well, how did you grow up? Like, how is my grandma? Like, so I could kind of get some understanding on why my mom was the way she was. Um, and just trying to tell myself not to internalize any of it or take it personally because, it's like she gave me what she could give me, and I
Right.
had to be grateful for that, and I had to just forgive my mom. Like it's that's another process, like I have to continuously forgive her because it's like again we're human, so it's like I had to think about the fact that she wasn't with me for some time. So she doesn't know, the ins and outs or the little parts of me that, maybe my grandmother knew. So I had to get understanding in general, like with my mom.
I think there are a lot of people who are still grappling with, we're not still grappling with, but a lot of people are grappling with the issue of mother, or
Hmm.
what mother
Hmm.
is, what the mother was in your
Hmm.
life, how mothers respond to their children, how, and it's because the divine feminine, one of the main roles of the divine feminine is that of
Hmm.
mother. However, we have been in a really suppressed, oppressed, and debilitated
Hmm.
state. So, as
Hmm.
women, so to be like the quintessential mother, where you're always loving, always there, able to put yourself last and be there for everybody else. I think a lot of women, in practicality, have a challenge
Hmm.
with that. Have a challenge with that. So, as a mother now, what do you feel, um what is the curse or the change that you think you are in the process of healing in your line of mothers in your
Mm.
family?
Uh,
Have you thought about it, or
yes,
has it come through
yes,
yet?
I thought about it. I think I'm healing the spirit of perfectionism. Um, Allowing my son to just be himself. Um, I was drowned out. Like my authentic self was drowned out. My mom's authentic self was drowned out. My grandmother's identity was ridiculed, um, those kinds of things. Like, um, my grandmother grew up in Arkansas in like the late
Oh, so did mine.
1920s. Yeah, late 1920s.
My I'm from Arkansas. My mother's from Arkansas too.
Okay, yep, they're from Little Rock, and
Hmm.
they went.
Oh, that's not far from where my mother's
Oh,
from.
okay, where's
My mother's from West Helena,
okay.
which is about an hour. I think it's about an hour from Little
Yep,
Rock.
yep, I remember passing a few signs showing about Helena on the way to Little Rock. But yeah, I think um, her growing up when she did, like, her all of her siblings were very fair skinned, and they had, nicer hair, and lighter eyes, and my grandmother was also lighter skinned, but to them, like, compared to them, she was dark. And so she had this thing about being dark. And when I was little, I remember there were times where, like, like, your elbows are darker, than the rest of your skin sometimes. And like
Yours
she
aren't.
now they're not.
Yours are the same color.
Now they're not, but
Y-
they were when I was younger. And my grandmother used to scrub the darkness off of my elbows. Like, she would scrub my elbows raw sometimes, and my knees raw sometimes, to try and get the black off of me. Like, she would literally say, like, we got to get this black off of you sometimes. And I knew that was her dealing with her stuff, but she saw it on me, and that was something that she went through, and her mother may have done that to her, so she just kind of reverted back for that moment to scrub the black off of me. And it was scary, as a little kid, because I'm like, well, ow, my elbows hurt, and but um it didn't make me feel any less than to be, brown. Although I'm not dark skinned, but I'm also not fair skinned either. So it didn't bother me that I was brown. Like, I love the fact that I'm brown. And then, like, with my hair, like, she would press my hair out all the time, and if my hair was like, when I got older, I decided to go natural, and so I had curls, and if I come in the house with curls or an afro puff, she'd be like, "Oh, are you gonna do your hair? You need to do your hair. You got your hair all over your head." Like, those kinds of things. And if it wasn't straight, it wasn't done. And I went through that phase with her, and I know that that was what she went through, and those were her traumas and her things, um, and
Now, did you realize this about her while you were pregnant, or was it beforehand?
no, I didn't realize it while it was happening. I realized.
No, while you were
Oh, but
pregnant,
no, it was right before. It was right before.
right before you got
Mm-hmm.
pregnant.
Yeah, I feel like it was one of those things I had
Wow,
to heal before I got pregnant. Like,
that's
and
major. That's a major change.
yeah,
That's a major revelation.
yeah, and then just being okay with being who I am, and accepting all parts of me, because I couldn't accept all parts of me. I couldn't even be who I wanted to be, because I had to be, who she wanted me to be. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't do that to my son. And I don't, I allow him to play with what he wants to play with. He watches what he wants to watch. He has his own interests now. And I know to take his interest, um, and to be able to kind of feed into his interest, so that he can evolve in those things. Like, he loves to learn already, and he's only 2. So that's a good thing, but he learns the way that he learns. So I'm not gonna sit and put books in front of him, because he's not a fan of sitting listening to stories if I'm reading it from a book, but he'll read, or he'll let, like, his tablet read him a story. He'd prefer that. So, I'm not gonna force certain things on my son, because I know that that's not going to work for him. I understand that what works for me doesn't work for him, and I have to be okay with that, you know.
Right. And so let me ask you, can you walk me through your pregnancy and when you were about ready to work with Spirit Traveler? Tell me about the birth story.
Okay, so like you said, the pandemic was going on. So before the pandemic, when I was going to the doctors, I went to I won't say what hospital I went to, but it was in Detroit. And they were very, I don't even know the word to use, but it's like they were expecting me to be like this young, dumb, uneducated woman. And they were trying to tell me that there were things wrong with my son. Um, and there was nothing wrong with my baby. Like, I had an ultrasound, and they saw something on this ultrasound that they were like, oh yeah, he has this disorder called CPAM, which is where when the lungs develop, some of the tissue that develops is dead. So it's not like living tissue, it's more of like a hard substance rather than, the expandable, breathable substance that should be in your lung. And so I was about maybe 12 weeks at the time, and they were telling me he had that. And I'm like, okay, so you do know that his lungs are not developing right now, they're dormant. So why would you want to diagnose him with something, And then they're like, well, he might have Down syndrome. And I'm like, well, we did blood tests and there are no genetic defects. Why are you trying to say my child has Down syndrome? He does not have Down syndrome. Like, we went through like so many different things that they were trying to diagnose my son with, and he wasn't even like completely developed yet. Like, they wanted to do an amniocentesis on me, and I told them no. I'm like, you're not sticking a needle in my stomach. Like, this can cause a miscarriage. Like, you guys are crazy, for no reason. And they're like, oh, you know what that is. So I'm like, okay, this is a little scary. So I stopped going to the doctor. The pandemic was like happening, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go back. So I didn't. I didn't go back to another prenatal appointment until maybe like May. Um, and he was due in June. And I felt like, Spirit God was just like, trust me. I told you about your son. You know who he is. Um, just believe and trust in that, and believe and trust in who you are, believe and trust in who I am, and everything will be fine. And so then I went back.
And when did you,
Hmm.
yeah, okay, so when did you meet Spirit Traveler?
So I met Spirit while I was at home in labor.
How did you get to her?
Okay, so before I went into labor on a Thursday. I went to the hospital. They had me in the hospital. Um, Everything was, they wanted to give me Pitocin. I said no, I don't want it. So they let me stay there for 6 hours. Then they sent me home. And there was this older lady who came to get me in a wheelchair. And when she came in the room, she sounded just like my grandmother who passed away. And she's like, "Well, baby, why you don't have no socks on your feet?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, and this lady was just talking to me like my real grandmother would have talked to me. And she was like, "Don't you come back to this hospital to have that little boy." And she didn't know, like, she didn't see my chart. She had no clue, but she knew that I was carrying a little boy. And she's like, "They're killing us. And they're killing our sons in this hospital, honey." She said, "You wouldn't believe the things that I saw during this
What?
COVID.
Are you
I
serious?
promise." She said they do not want any more little black boys in this world. So you make sure you don't give them yours. I promise.
Are you
Yes,
serious?
so this is early Friday morning when I'm going home. I'm in labor, active labor still. I'm having serious contractions. I call one of my good friends up. She's in Flint, And I'm like, please help me. Like, I need you to help me find a midwife because I want to have my baby at home. So she's calling her friends, and she had a connection. There's a middle person between her and Spirit Traveler. And so they connected her to Spirit, and then we all connected. So like my friend came down to Detroit. My other friend came, she had just started doula training, and I was her first birth. And so we had everything was documented and recorded. And then Spirit was on the phone. She wasn't even there with us in person. She was at a birthday party when we called her, and she stopped what she was doing and said, I believe that this baby is special. And I just give me 30 minutes and I'm going home and I will call you back. And she did. And she talked me through some more personal things because my son was stuck, and she was like, he's stuck because you still have one more thing that you need to let go, and you have one more block. And she said, I'll let you handle that. She said, you speak to your son and you talk it through with him, and then call me back as soon as your water breaks. And so I sat there in the dark, and I spoke with my baby Spirit, and I told him, my fears, and I told him that I was sorry for being afraid, and that I believed, that he was going to be okay, and that he could come through whenever he got ready. And maybe about 10 minutes later, my water broke.
So wait a minute. How did she know? How did she know about the stuckness?
Because she's a wonderful connected woman. Like, she knew everything. She knew what positions I was laying in. She was not there, like I said, but she knew, like, she was like, get off your back, you need to get on your knees, you need to, like, she could see everything, and she was able to tap in to see, you know spiritually. She could see what was going on, and she's like, yeah, he's facing this way. When he comes out, his face is going to be up. And he came out that way. His face was up. My mother was actually the one who caught him when he came out. She delivered him, and I feel like that was a huge portion of things. I felt like that was something that had to happen. That she was the one who carried him and pulled him out. Um, then Spirit was also saying, like, after the fact, she's like, I'm so happy your grandmother was there to help support you. And I'm like, my grandmother? And she's like, yeah. I said, you mean my mom? She said, no, your grandmother. And I'm like, well, my grandmother has passed away. Like, so she wasn't like there physically, and she's like, oh, she's like, well, she was there because that's who I saw standing up over you as you were, pushing your son out. And I'm like, wow. And she's like, like this portal, she could see this portal open up above us, like that helped him come through. And oh my God, like it was whew, I would I would do it all over again, like 30 more times if I could. It was the most beautiful moment that I've ever experienced in my life. Like, not only just physically but spiritually, it was wild. It's wild.
So can you tell me some of the spiritual evolution revelations that you have come into since becoming a mother?
The connection I have with my son is uncanny. Like, um, I the same kind of connection that Spirit had at that moment to know what was happening between us. I have that with my son. Like, I know when something's wrong with him, and he knows when something's wrong with me. Like, emotionally, if I'm going through something, my son would just walk up to me and he just look at me and just grab my face, or he would come and hug me because he may know that I might be having a bad day, or even when he was a baby, like he would be really clingy on the days when I was having some issues, because I did go through postpartum depression, but it never kept me from my connection with my son at all. If anything, I think it made us closer. Um, and I don't know, like I feel like it brought out, more of my mothering spirit, because I've been, very nurturing my whole life. But I feel like becoming a mother opened up the portal for me to really accept like exactly who I am, and
And so, who are you? Who do you know yourself to be at this point after this experience?
at this point,
I know that you have been. I know that you're an ordained
I
minister,
am, yeah.
and you are also an Orisha devotee, or you practice some African
I
spirituality.
do, yeah.
So, who do you now know yourself to be?
So in finding out about African spirituality and traditional religion, I found that my head Orisha is Yemaya, which definitely explains like who I am, because that is me. I am the mother, the nurturer. I'm the one that always makes sure that everybody else is okay. That divine feminine energy, and I was able to really come into it and accept it, because before I didn't accept it, I hated it because I felt like
Why?
I was always the person that like had to help fix people. And I didn't like that. Like I'm like, why does everybody come to me broken? And I didn't understand that that's because of who I am. Like, um and I see it now as an honor to be able to have the perspective I have and the connection I have with spirit, and to be able to help people. Um, and I even remember being a kid, and people, you ask what you want to be when you grow up, and I'm like, I just want to help people. I just want to help people. But I didn't know what that looked like or what all that came with, and I didn't accept what all it came with. But after having my son and like just seeing my strength and seeing, like physical strength and emotional strength, and I'm like, oh, I can conquer the world now. I pushed the whole human out at home with no medication, and I loved it. Like that's I can do anything now.
So you weren't preparing though. You weren't preparing to have a
Mm,
at home birth.
mm-mm.
So you didn't. Did you have techniques to work with the pain and?
Absolutely not. I knew that everything was
Oh,
mental though. So I do practice like meditation and stuff like that anyway. And so I just use those techniques to keep myself from like, you know, being overwhelmed with pain, but it was definitely very painful. There was moments where the pain was so bad, like I was nauseous, um, and I just but I had this supernatural strength that I'd never seen before come from myself. Like, but it just I just kind of I had to use water. I had to use, like I said, my breath work. I had to use different positionings. Luckily, like I said, I had my friends there who were like looking up things for me, and Spirit was telling me like different positions that would be more comfortable for me to be in. So, I mean, I had everything I needed. Uh, Even though it was unplanned.
wow. Can you tell me what's your baby's name?
His name is Malik. Malik Jelani. That was the name that Spirit gave me for him to have.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, what was Malik like as a baby in arms?
Whew. So when he first was born, they sat him on my chest, and he opened his eyes up bright and wide, and he lifted his head up, and he looked around as to say, "Where the heck am I?" And he saw me, and he looked at me, and he just was like just like in awe of like, "Oh, this is my mommy. I know you, lady." And he laid his head back down, and I think that was the moment that I fell in even more deeper love with him than I had already been in love with him. And he just, oh my goodness, he was advanced, and he grew very quickly. Like he was huge. Like he was big in my stomach because I'm not a big woman at all. Like I'm very small. But I gained like 45 pounds with him. He was very long. He was like 21, 22 inches long. And probably about like 8 pounds maybe. We didn't measure him or anything like that because we didn't have like a scale or any of those things at the house when he was born. But as he grew, he started to grow so fast. Um, by the time he was 6 months, I believe he was like the size of a 9 month old. He's just tall and big, and now he's two and he's huge. People ask all the time like, "Is he in school?" And I'm like, "No, he's only two." But he's that big. Like he's huge. He's tall. And he's very advanced. When he was a baby, he comprehended everything that I was telling him. Like before he could speak, he understood things. Like um, he he's very um, he likes things the way he likes things. I say that. He's very um, he's he's very particular. He just reminds me of a little old man. Like he's a, he's a little old man. And I was kind of like he wasn't talking for a while. And or like saying mama. He would call me E because I would say mommy instead of mama to him. So he got the E part. He would call me E for a long time. And then he stopped, and now he's talking in full sentences, and and
He talks in
yeah,
full
he talks in
sentences.
full sentences when he wants to. Everything is when he wants to. It's like he walked when he wanted to, even though he could walk early. He just decided that he didn't want to walk and he wanted to be carried around a little longer. So he everything he does in his own timing. Um, so he's very much aware that he's doing it in his own timing. He's very, very smart. A smart kid for sure.
What
He
day
was
was he
born
born?
on June 27th. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. And so, do you have any idea, any vision of what role he might play during this time?
Uh, he's
I mean, during his life?
he's definitely gonna be a healer. He's going to heal with love, with pure love. Um, because he can melt the coldest of hearts. He's already done that. Um, and he's just so loving and caring, and um, I believe that he's going to um, be very much in tune with himself and his emotions. I feel like he's going to be very balanced in carrying both the divine masculine and feminine. I feel like he's gonna definitely have the yin yang balance for sure. I just see him being like this innovator. Like, um, he's definitely not gonna be like a normal young man. He's gonna be one that is different, and I want him to always know that bit of difference is going to really change other people's lives, and that he needs to stay that way and not try and conform and be, someone that he's not. So, but I think he's gonna be an
Wow.
amazing man. Yeah,
Wow. That's going to really take
yeah.
some really supportive nurturing to keep his mind focused on being, not conforming.
Mhm.
I mean, so, but I think you're
I'm
ready. I
sorry.
think he's ready and you're ready.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, I believe so. Like, I feel like I had to go through all that I had to go through so that I could be the type of mom that he really needs, so that he can
Mm-hmm.
be who he's supposed to be. Yeah,
And he came here to be with you.
he did. He did. And they knew I needed him. And like my grandparents, like I said, they were the ones who raised me, and they both passed on. And I have like pictures of them on my, ancestral altar, and he goes to their pictures and he points at them and he knows them, like he knows them. Um, he does. Like he'll
Wow.
bring me the picture. Like if I'm having, like I said, if I'm having a day or something like that, like he'll go over and get the picture and give it to me and be like, huh, mm-hmm,
Really?
yep, yep. And he hugs the picture himself, and like he knows them. He knows them. Yep.
Wow. Wow. Well, Mia, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your story.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I believe um that we should all open ourselves up to the flow of spirit, and the idea of being obedient and listening to ourselves and our intuition, and um just so that we can allow all that is supposed to come into our lives to be. Because if I did not go with the flow, if I did not listen to the intuition I have, if I did not listen to the spiritual inclinations I had, I would not be here where I am. I would not have my son. Um, and I just, like I said, I just wouldn't be the person I am today. So, I hope that everyone feels encouraged and inclined to listen to that part of themselves, so that they can have all that life wants to give them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you for listening to In the Center of Her Power podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like or subscribe on whatever listening service you use. I am your host, Sanaa Green, and I sincerely hope you were fed with divine feminine soul food.